overall, right, in terms of goals, ZvP has to just take the biggest priority, right? That's kind of like #1 focus, and then we can kind of circle back to other matchups as we go, would be kind of the direction, right?
Yeah.
Okay. In terms of ZvP, obviously a big part of that, what we're going to do is we're going to want to talk about basically PROTOSS army growth, and the real goal is to stop that. And PROTOSS has all the best tools, right? So fucking kill them. That's kind of the same thing, but what that really gets to is the fact that Zerg has imba production. Zerg has broken production. So if we hit sharp attacks, they don't have time to build the right tools to counter it.
Yeah, I think I put this in the doc too, but prior to the Void patch, I was a dedicated 38 drone Queen Walker, and
oh yeah,
I was pretty good at it. You know, not to pat myself on the back too much, but like, you know, it's one dimensional, but like I got very good at it. So, you know, part of this patch coming on is me just trying to like do very different kind of things just to kind of feel it out. But again, I also feel like there's just like a knowledge base that doesn't quite seem to be there, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I think definitely there's going to be some decision making after that that'll be super huge. So I know you were kind of lost and you were experimenting, and I'd kind of been like, hey, you know, and I just gave you some really rough notes on Discord. And I was like, try to, you know, just flip your Roach Horn, Spore Crawler, gas timings. It was very basic what I messaged you, right? So it's not like I gave you a full build or anything. So have you been trying to play that style, and like what composition have you been playing since we...
Thanks for the Bezos.
Yeah, so I'm basically, like, I was trying to nail down, you know, pretty simple, just third hatch, third queen, all that stuff. And basically I'm going for like +1 melee into +2 banelings, and just kind of rolling them everywhere.
With Ravages as well though, right?
Yeah, you know, like I started learning it with like just committing to Ling Bane the whole time, but then it's like, if they make 5 Archons, I lose the game, you know, like that happened a lot. So, you know, when you threw in the Roach Warren timing, it helped me just kind of have it there and be more, like have more of an ability to kind of respect that counter push. And it's kind of going okay, but like it's still, there's still so many where I'm like, I made too many roaches, or I kept making too many roaches, or like, you know, I made too many waves of banelings and then I have no money for roaches. Like it feels really hard for me to balance, you know?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because there are these like weird drastic fall off points. Like Ravager Bane sometimes wrecks Zealot Archon type Stormy Immortal armies, and then like if they drop 2 Archons in your main and warp in 10 Zealots there, and then 10 Zealots attack your 4th, and the army attacks their front, you're like, oh, Banelings are really shit now because I can't micro them in 3 places at once against Zealots that are already spread out in my drone lines. Like, you're not going to hit the big clump, you know? So there's like these funny dynamics as well where like Banelings wreck Zealots unless the Zealots are everywhere at once. And then you're like, oh shit, I wish I just had more like roaches to deal with those because I can A-move them and just clean them up, right? But there's some funny kind of dynamics. I think Ravager Bane's really good. We need to focus on... So back on the whole, they can always build the counters, right? So you've got to kill their army. Going after their economy is good, but part of the reason we go after their economy with the Banelings, the Ravager, the Ling Bane, is to try and lure their army into the open or into a position where we can surround and kill it, right? Because it's the army that can always end up getting out of control if we let it grow too much, right? So definitely we're going to be more like Ravager, Ling Bane. We don't want to be like too Ling Bane focused. Let's hop into some replays and look at how your games have gone in the last week. So I'm in chat channels Piggy, Piggy, or Pig2, Pig then the number 2, and let's.
Sure, I'm Linda from HR.
Can you shoot me an invite? What's Linda from HR from?
It's honestly nothing. It's just a name I thought was funny, and then people thought it was funny, and I'm like, well, I guess I can't change it.
Show me on the door where the PROTOSS touched you. Yeah, I don't know. That's very inappropriate. You shouldn't be using lasers on your Zerg.
I also think it's funny because people on the ladder, they out themselves for never working a corporate job because they're like, what's HR? And I'm like, it's okay. Human resources, it's fine. It's fine.
There's people that get you in trouble for speaking gamer words in the office, guys. Yeah, so just host up some recent ZVPs. Any ones that you had either specific questions
So
about.
I do watch with others, and then I promote
Yeah.
you, right?
Yeah, that's it. It's a lobby host, not party leader. Yeah. So, yeah, just make me host and definitely lobby host. Oh, wrong one. You gave me the crown.
Well,
I'm gonna give you the crown back. You got to make me the lobby host. So you got to click me in the lobby, not in the top right.
oh, in the lobby. Yeah, I always screw this up. Lobby host.
It doesn't give you the option in the top right. Yeah. Awesome. All right, guys. So and you're currently, was it 4.2? Was it? What's your MMR right now?
I hover at like 3.9 right now.
Oh, 3.9.
I honestly, my ZVP is 33%, so it's clearly lower and dragging me because some days I can crush in some of the other matchups if it's, you know, one of those slumps, but
Yeah. Well, I just want you to remember, dude. Give it 2 weeks. I know you're gonna be practicing a fair bit and playing a bit and stuff. So in 2 weeks, you're gonna be a bit disappointed with your Zerg vs Zerg and Zerg vs TERRAN, okay? Because your ZVP is gonna catch right up, and you're suddenly gonna be like, shit, these matchups are really hard again. So prepare yourself. The classic, I fixed one matchup and now another matchup's really weak.
yeah.
All right, so we're going for a standard hatch first here. Yeah, okay, cool. Hatch first. Looks pretty tight. Looks like we didn't double up our workers. Do you normally do that? Or some games, yeah, some games no?
Not really. I mean, I'll occasionally check, but I'm not very dedicated at it.
It's not the biggest deal, to be fair, but yeah, and it didn't matter too much this game.
Yeah, I found if I just rally to one of the near ones, they kind of will sort them out, like, most of the time.
Yeah. I see you're rallying your eggs, just a nice habit, you know. You're kind of clicking them to the one that only has one dude on it and stuff. So yeah, they are naturally sorting themselves out pretty well, just using your techniques. Do you hotkey your overlords? So you've hotkeyd your first overlord on 3, spawning pool on 8, hatchery is 0. What's that custom key?
It's tilde.
Tilde. Beautiful. All right, so tilde there. We've got 3 there. Main armies on 1. Control grouping eggs. Queens in production. We're going to pull off gas at link speed, I imagine, here.
Yep.
Do we leave 1 mining or no?
Yeah, I leave 1.
Okay. Going to go after the probe. Great tip here is if you are building 4 lings in this matchup to send either 1 or 2 lings just to go, you know, basically to like their third base. And I often just queue it straight into the main as well. And I always do that right from the start. In terms of your overlord scouting, other than that, like, because if a stalker comes out right now, your overlord, are you just going to sit it on the pillar and hide there? Is that what you do?
Yeah, I mean, if it pops out that early, I'm trying to send it in, but sometimes I just let it lag a little too late. Like, I know it's risky because if the stalker's popping out right now, it's we're not going to make it deep enough.
So this is why I actually have there's 2 types of scouting I recommend in ZvP that are really, really basic, okay? So, well, there's a really basic one and a much harder one, which is the one that I usually do, and sometimes I get lazy and stop doing it, and then I remember, hey, I feel like winning ZvP, and I do it more. So in terms of scouting, I really recommend for most players, just queue your first overlord to go straight through the main from the natural.
Yeah.
From the start. Like, just check there's a nexus and a gateway and stuff, but then it's already queued through from like the very start of the game when you click it across the map. Just because that way, unless they chrono a stalker out first, you can actually scout and get out of the base if they build a stalker second without them seeing it, right? And that's, I would say 90% of games, people build the stalker second after the first unit. Obviously, it depends on the meta. Sometimes you get people who all go stalker first. So it gets you the scouting info quicker without you having to adapt or adjust anything. It's literally an order you gave 5 seconds into the game is scouting for you, and all you need to do is look at it. So that's the advantage, right? But it's also going to stay alive as well, so you don't get that slight supply block potentially or that sort of thing. So that's kind of the easy version of scouting. What do you think of that? Any questions on that?
Yeah, I think that's good. I mean, I used to just click it all the way in, but you know, I'm like, oh, I want to look at the wall for longer, but I realize now that it's just like, yeah, you gotta get in there.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things where it's like, it's tempting to look at the wall and get all these like little bonus points. Like, is he double chronoing the adapts? You know, did the warp gate stop and then start? But I find like it's just until we get a bit more confident with like really high level knowledge in the matchup, it's just more reliable this way. If you do want to try the advanced scouting technique, so the way you do that is Overlord skirts the edge of the main after spotting first unit out of gateway. So what I mean by that, the edge, I mean the cliff. So basically the Overlord is like starts here, and then you can see the first unit pop out still if you want, or that same vision you had. But then after that, you just click it up here, like to kind of like, I guess, around the Reaper ledge. So if a Stalker comes out, you can always run to the high ground or run to the low ground, depending on where the Stalker shoots you from, and then get to the dead space off to the side. So it can't kill you, right? So you always keep the Overlord alive in that scenario, unless they go Stalker first, in which case they can kill it, but that means they're letting your 4 Zerglings run straight into their base and kill some probes and get a full scout. So either way, it's that combo, which is really good. Well, you might be like, okay, but what if they do just send a Stalker on the high ground? You can't scout with the Overlord. That's right. But if they're doing that, your Zerglings can walk in. The only exception being if they keep the Adept at home and the Stalker at home and just full turtle up. And even then, you usually should be able to just sacrifice that Overlord or something and see what's up. So it's like almost always you're going to see everything that goes on. And often it's like if they try to chase the Overlord, your Zergling just walks straight in the front door. So basically, it's a combination of Overlord skirts the edge and 2 Lings on different control group get queued to touch their third base, right? Just touch the ground, then go into main and circle it through scout. And usually I can just queue that up and it's like, oh, they're blocking the Lings at the front, send the Overlord in for the sacrifice. Oh, they're not blocking the Lings? Cool. Overlord can just continue off to that dead space and be safe. Like I said, don't do this. This is unnecessary, but if you want to start getting... If the current scouting, just queuing it in, starts feeling a bit bad, everyone's going Stalker first, you want to do something more advanced, we can move on to that, okay?
Yeah.
My man!
All right, that's sick. All right. Okay, so let's go back and look at your build order now. We just completely ignored what you were doing for the last 3 minutes. Okay, let's go further back. Let's check. Okay. So you've pulled 2 guys off gas. Do you have a set drone that you send to your third? How do you remember to send a drone to the third? Because I see you just grabbed it and clicked it there, but I'm wondering if there's something that reminds you to do that.
Not really. It's usually when I look at and I see I'm at like 30 supply, and I just kind of grab whatever is available.
So that's a decent way to do it. Sometimes you'll end up at just being 15, 20 seconds late for no reason. So I find what's really nice is after your first pair of Zerglings, it's your second lava that pops on your natural. So this drone here that's building, I would control group that on my builder hotkey, like number 2, and just click it to the third base. And that's going to get there right around like 2:35 or something. Maybe it'll hang out for a few seconds, but not too long. It'll time out really well.
Okay.
So second lava on natural, which is your first drone after Lings build.
And that's with 4 Lings being built still, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
I think we'll stick to 4 Lings. I think that's a nice solid way to do it. Because then you can chase the probe with 2 while sending 2 to scout. Or just, you know, keep all 4 to defend if you want. Obviously, just 2 Lings doesn't really defend an Adept coming across the map.
Yeah, I played around with being kind of greedy and just getting 2, but I was like, I don't like this.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing is, you can get caught with that when the Adept comes in, but if you've got 2 Lings that run into their base and are killing probes, usually you're going to win that trade just because Queen plus A moving your 2 Lings and drones, you're going to kill the Adept, maybe you lose a drone or 2. You look back, you've killed 3 probes. You know, they're the one who usually loses out in that trade, so you kind of feel all right with that as a Zerg. Oh, Overlords. Okay, so you are sending a second Overlord across the map as like a backup scout, I guess, in case the first one dies. I'm okay with it. I was going to be like, don't do that, but no, I think that's fine. I think it's good to have a backup Overlord. You can use it as an Overseer later, and then you're going to get up like the Ring of Vision outside your base, right, with your next few Overlords, I imagine?
Yeah.
You've already got one clicked out to the far left. This map's really hard, though, right? Because there's like quite a few spots where the Adepts can come in from the front. So I would say getting the Overlord out here and here. You can see where I'm signaling, right?
Yep.
I would say those 2 are kind of the most important. Maybe that's a bit further out than we need to be, just a little in front of where yours is. Yeah. Because obviously the earlier you see those Adepts, the better. They could still come in from that right side as well, though. I'd say the far left is the least important, but it also takes forever to get there. So
Yeah,
it's up to
I
you.
think it's just one of these things where it's like I've been burned before from this like far left path, and I'm just like I'm gonna remember to put one there. But
The cheeky adepts from there, man. Yeah, they're the ones that like 5 minutes when your lings are over scouting their third or something, right? So they've
I
got to.
swear, man, sometimes in ZvT too, Hellions they like appear from that corner, and you're like, they just teleported here. Like,
It's legit super super annoying.
but yeah, no, I see what you're saying about the front paths there.
So these two overlords we didn't queue. So I would have liked these two overlords definitely to be queued out there, even though it's a bit later, right? We don't know if there's gonna be a void ray running around. Just because you never know, man, especially if it's Glaive Adepts or something. Much harder if we don't have vision of where that prism's rotating to and that sort of stuff. And it should always be every matchup, right? Ring of Vision. And then we should fill in the edges with like 2 overlords for prisms, void rays, oracles, whatever, right? So you can see we built a few overlords here that we didn't click out. And then a bit later, we clicked some more overlords out to fill that in. So just something to focus on there in terms of scouting. All right, so now let's go back and actually talk build order again. So I keep getting distracted by little scouting things. So third is going to go down here on 31. That's interesting. Normally it'd be 32. It doesn't matter. All right, so you're going to go Creep Tumor first on the natural. I'm a big double inject boy in this matchup, but both are perfectly fine. We should build a queen and then an overlord. Yeah, and then back to droning, right? And you're always going to hit a 36 supply block, but as long as you're like tapping your drones here, that's all fine. You hit supply block on 36, Overlord pops in 7 or 8 seconds. Looking like a pretty tight opening so far, dude. This feels pretty good. Any mistakes you're noticing? It looks pretty good to me.
No, I mean, again, the third queen overlord, like it's stuff I've worked on before, so I'm just like, okay, we can focus on this. It's so I feel pretty okay about it.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, just for the people watching in chat, can someone please link Harper's stream? Because just in case you guys don't know, Harper's got a very sick Zerg stream. You've always channeling some good energy over there. So if you guys can do that, that'd be great. I guess there's 2-minute delay on, so I'll see in a few minutes if people do that or not. I think they will. They've probably already done it, to be fair, and I just got to scroll up. So we do hit a bit of a dark here. So dark is where you get supply blocked on 44. He does it every game. We got to enjoy watching that last night as he, multiple games in a row, got massively supply blocked on 44. So at this point, we're building drones. We do need more overlords. Now, if your overlord had scouted earlier, that's good. But especially the moment you get hit by a stalker or anything, even before trying to make evasive maneuvers, it should always be like, try and build 3 overlords, right? Because you're going to lose that one. You also need overlords. So let's see how quickly we build these OVs, which, to be real, we should already have been starting just because you are almost supply blocked. So we build 1. We should be like tapping it. But I guess you didn't have lava. You squeeze another drone out. More overlords. Every lava that's popping, you're tapping drones right now. I like that you're tapping. You're continually producing. This is awesome.
Yeah.
And you are tapping another overlord. But we need another 2 overlords right now, like ASAP, or we're going to hit a supply block on 52 as well. Or I guess it'll be, 58 because the third hatch, isn't it? Yeah. So you're going to start a 4th queen right now. Okay. So did you see the Stargate? No.
Not technically.
So I don't think you know what you're up against. And you're kind of forced to play versus Stargate response. You're not really sure what it is. Your opponent's build is really weird because the Oracle's a little late, but they're going super fast, blink and forge. You even see that forge. Anyways, I guess in terms of raw structure, you can see your droning slowed down a little bit here. So that's the supply block kicking in. And at this point, we should be building like 4 overlords at a time, right? Just because your income is kicking up. Yeah. Now you're going a really fast Evo for a +1 melee, which is definitely totally fine versus Stargate builds. Versus ground, never do that. We like cannot be going Evo before +1, before Roach Warren, sorry. As a general rule, because you've got to get that safety Roach Warren up 4 minutes, probably latest, if it's a Twilight opening, yeah?
Yes, I think I tried to do that when I was when I first was learning this, but yeah, I realized it's not the most fun result.
it's just expensive, takes a long time to kick in, and unless we're full gambling on a pure Ling Bane style, which we can do, we can give you a full gimmick style. We're just gonna have to pray for our opponents not to make Archons, which you've already pointed out is a big problem. You can kind of transition back into Ravagers, but like it's such a flexible style, like it's so fragile, glass cannon nature. It's kind of nasty. Now your Roach Warren is crazy late here, dude. So this is definitely a thing where 4 minutes 45, 5 minutes kind of is when that Roach Warren should be coming down latest after Stargate versus Stargate build. So this is still like, obviously we don't know what's coming in behind this unless you for some reason know this guy has 3 Stargates or something. I don't need a Roach Warren at all. We definitely want to be getting that Roach Warren, say, about then. So do we have a rule for like, so we're basically playing a verse Stargate replay here. We're going to get, what you got your 3 spores down. You went up to also 5 queens. So you've gone 5 queens, 3 spores. We'll go for a pretty fast Evo around like, was it like 4:30 or something like that, right?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay. You're droning pretty well. There was 1 or 2 small gaps because of the 44 supply block where we can just like tweak the efficiency. But other than that, we're doing all right. But yeah, when would you put the Roach Warren down? And put an extra gas.
Like 4:45 and second gas.
So you reckon, okay, so 4...
I realized that's definitely something I didn't have like standardized before, especially for Stargate, where it's just like, maybe you'll need this quickly, but I see the value in getting it in case they just do weird things.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, so if you see somebody builds 1 Void Ray and just denies your overlords and nothing else, right? And you don't see anything else coming out of the Stargate, that's a big sign of there could be a huge ground aggression follow-up. You could just be building 2 carriers as well, but definitely you need that Roach Warren to be safe, right? Because if it's just a charge lot all in, you know, it's like, in that scenario, I'm checking all the corners for proxies with Zerglings. I'm like, you better not have a fucking proxy out here. I'm getting that Roach Warren ready, and I'm blind building Roaches, because while scouting very actively with Lings going, what is it? What is it? Is it Mass Glaive Adept going to come out behind this? Like, what is this build, right? So definitely there are times where you're just like that. And then there's other times where you see Oracle, and now a Phoenix killing my Overlord Scout. Like, this guy can't be hitting a fucking, 5-minute charge lot timing or Glaive Adept timing or anything like that, right? Like, so it's like that kind of dichotomy where there's definitely layers within it, but we'll start with like a real standard, like me versus Stargate, build Roach Warren this time. And then, if me not know what happening, when Roach Warren finish, me always build 8 safety Roaches. It's kind of like just a good general rule for ZvP to be safe. And then we want to like layer on top of that overly safe play are like, no, this guy's not being aggressive because of this and this, therefore I'm just going to drone straight to 66 workers, off a handful of Lings, get me upgrades, and then I'll build army, right? So we want to start with the real very simpletons base standard play, and then we'll add our complicated reactions on top of that, and that should give us a better structure. So whenever we are in the dark or our opponent's confusing us, we're playing pretty solid.
Gotcha.
Okay, so I'm writing that down. 445 Roach Warren plus second gas. We've got kind of like, now that could be, if we wanted to think about when that would be. So let's like really cement when that is in your build. 445, right? So I would say normally that's when your main saturated, your natural saturated, and then you're basically got about 8 workers on your third. That's what I would expect at about 445 off of this sort of opening. That's one way to think of that, okay?
Yeah, okay.
I think, oops. So let me just write that down here. So in terms of when that is, that would be, at this point, we've got about 60 supply. So it'd be 60 plus supply. Let's say 65 supply. Just to give us a marker. About 8 drones on third base. Now, obviously, some of those drones, like you've actually got 14 drones on your third in a few seconds when these drones pop out, right?
Yeah.
But it's going to be a little variable, so it's it's somewhere in that range. You could be, oh wow, I'm almost fully saturated on my third. I've got 12 drones on my third or something like that. Let's say 12. I'll say about 12 drones on the third base, and then suddenly you're like building Roach Warrens, building gases, and you're chewing up drones for all this stuff, and that's going to make a difference. And obviously, the game time is going to be quite slowed down. If your opponent's a lot more aggressive early, you've got to build more Zerglings. There's a bit more fighting going on with like Chrono to Depths, and the first Oracle dives in early and kills 3 drones. That's why it's nice to just have an idea of where your drone count should be. So in that messy game, you're not like, oh, it's 4:45, quick, drop a roach warren, drop a second gas, and you don't have a single drone on your third base, and your economy is like shit, and it's getting shitter because we're following our standard timings. So we just make sure we give ourselves the context to be a bit flexible, yeah?
Yeah.
All right. Sweet as. So if we had the roach warren down, other than that, roach warren, second gas mining, layers on the way, this all would feel pretty damn good, right? I'd be pretty damn happy with it. Because you go for that early tumor and quite a few queens here, you spread a lot more creep than I do in this matchup, which is always going to help you out. Creep's great. I'm hey, I've got 2 tumors going sort of guy in the early game. And, versus ground anyway. I guess versus air, you always end up
I just feel like I'm wrapped in a warm purple blanket, you know?
It's the Zerg safety blanket, man. Everyone's a lot better at creep than they used to be. The old days players, I think, were a bit better at the strategic understanding of some things, and their mechanics just sucked ass, and they didn't know how to spread tumors and stuff. Those people were like these veteran RTS players. I was like, wow, you guys really understand the game. You just kind of need to learn how to build things better and spread creep, guys. Come on, man. Like, okay. So, and then you're just going to go Ravager Bane off 3-base saturation. So you've been floating money for a little bit here, and you stopped injecting in macro cycles at a certain point. I think it was about 420 or something. So check out here, right? Notice how your queens aren't really injecting on a cycle at all.
Yeah.
How do you feel about macro cycles in general? Do you think you're organized with them, or do you think you're generally more chaotic? And especially with oracles forcing your queens to react, do you kind of like freak out a little bit and just stop injecting properly?
I mean, I think it's inconsistent. I think there's times when it's like dialed in and I inject my 3 hatcheries really quickly and feel very cool about it. But then there's other times where like, yeah, like I don't have a queen on my natural right now. Like it's unattended. But I also think it's like that weird kind of transition from like the early game where I'm like, you know, like hitting the drone key every 10 seconds, and just trying to do things really quickly to like this more, I don't know, when it kind of spaces out a little bit more later on.
Where you're batching it up like more organized, right? At the start,
yeah,
just, like,
and
every
sometimes
larva you want to build it straight away, but then you want to kind of slow down and do these big batches later on, yeah?
Yeah, and sometimes I feel like those two kind of like blur together, and then it's just really inconsistent, you know, after like the 5 or 6 minute mark, you know?
Yeah, that's definitely, because I can see it here where your macro starts to flail a little bit, and you're still doing a lot of things, but I would say the organization really starts to lack, right? So one thing is you've only got 1 queen on your defense key, your anti Stargate unit key. So the thing is, number one, if you have a bit better overlord spread, remember what I said earlier? We don't need to wait for the creep. We could have had overlords out here a bit earlier, and these overlords on the edges aren't covering the edge. That should be a bit further out, and we should actually have another overlord up here. I know it feels like you've got the edge covered, but you don't with this overlord, and you shouldn't. That overlord could be even a bit further south on the left side. But you want another overlord actually watching the edge in case oracle's flying there and stuff. Now, I don't want us to have 2 different queen groups. I think that's way too complicated. But I do think we should have had these more than 1 queen on a control group earlier. I feel like you're trying to do it a bit too manually, and we should be making it easy for ourselves. When you inject, you're manually boxing queens at each hatch, as far as I can tell, yeah?
Yep.
So for you, it should be easy in terms of like, I'm pulling a queen off here. I'll tell her to inject before she comes over to the fighting group, and I'll tell that hatchery to build a new queen. Is that something you often do as like a little bit of muscle memory there if you've got to pull a queen to become like an anti-air unit?
Yeah. The all hands on deck call sometimes too, you know?
Okay. So always replace the queens when you pull them. And your creep spread's great, but it's just nowhere near as important as spending your money and stuff. So I would much rather fuck up our creep spread a little bit for the next week or 2 while you get a bit better at just the spending through that period, because that's such an important period where you could have exploded. So let's look at that whole kind of 4-minute 30 period onwards again here. And let's just imagine ourselves in your shoes, right? Let's really imagine. So we're here, it's 4:20 or so. Okay, so you've got 1 queen on a control group. You've already got a tumor. You only need 1 tumor on each lane, by the way. So if I'm worried about creep, well, number 1, creep between your main could be nice. I don't think we need to worry too much. It's pretty much connected on this map. So I would be like, okay, this tumor is spreading to the right, yeah? Yep. So then I need 1 more tumor there. We've already got a tumor here that's going to spread that way. We just need 1 more tumor up the top left. So we just need 2 tumors. 1 in the bottom center and 1 in the top left, right? And then you've got 4 tumors all spreading out in 4 different lanes down the map. And that, as long as you spread those frequently, is going to be pretty sick creep spread for now. Way more than we really need. So for the creep, that's all we need to worry about. The more important thing is going to be those injects, right? So at this stage, right now we have one queen on a control group, but we also have a queen just standing in the middle of no man's land between our third and our natural. She's not on a control group. So that to me is like, hey, what's going on? Why is she there? And why hasn't she injected the third? Like, how did she get there? What's going on with this queen? So she was...
I have no idea.
I'm going back to her origin story, man. I'm trying to figure out where she came from. Okay, so she was the initial queen on the natural. Oh, you did 2 tumors before injecting. Okay, wow. Okay, so we are delaying our injects quite a long time. That's okay, as long as we start injecting the moment this other queen pops out. This is why your creep spread's so sick. Okay, so one of the things there is, notice your injects are already off cycle. Yeah. Because you've gone for this double tumor, whereas this other queen's not going to time out perfectly with the queen in existence in the main. So I prefer to literally just let this queen that's popping out here be my first creep spread. And I know that sounds kind of late, but personally, that's what I like to do. A lot of pros do like the earlier creep spread. It's up to you. But if we want to get one tumor going early, I think that queen should go back to injecting after that.
Okay.
And this queen should be the one that injects, just because that first one's got the same energy, perfectly synced with the queen in the main. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I see what you're saying. So I could still go tumor on the natural, and then her second 25 energy goes to inject.
Yeah. So first queen on natural goes tumor, then back to injecting. Your third queen does a new tumor, then goes and injects third base, yeah? Right? So you'd have just one tumor going. This queen that's just popped out in your natural, you send it over to build this tumor at the front that you already have in this replay, right? So you'd just be slightly behind on the second tumor, and then that would time out where that queen would get to your third. As the third finishes, you'd have another 25 energy, and you'd be injecting 3 hatcheries. Now, obviously, if there's oracles, you might just leave it at your natural for now, right? Spread a tumor and then hang at your natural, you know, if you're worried about an oracle flying in or whatever. Yeah. But yeah, I think that'd be a really, really nice way to do it. And then we can get those 2 injects synced up, and then hopefully the third inject will soon enough sync up with them, and we can, even as early as 4 minutes here. Yeah, 4 minutes, I think we already want to sync up. So that's going to be a goal, okay? 4 minutes, sync up, injecting on all 3 hatcheries. Now, subnote, if oracles are annoying you, next cycle, 4:30, okay? Aim for next cycle, 4:30, if you can't get a queen over there that early. So the aim is no later than 5 minutes. We'd like to be off this early, like tap, 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 inject, randomly do this, randomly do that. Already we want to like consolidate into a macro cycle, and that should allow you to slow down a little bit as a player and hopefully get way more done and feel like you're playing slower, but actually getting a lot more done, I think.
No, I can see the value in just setting a time where everything is supposed to sync up, because again, it's like when it starts disjointed, it just stays disjointed the whole time, you know?
Yeah, man. Especially if then the double oracle dive happens and then glaive adepts are coming across the map or this or that, right? It's like you're definitely not gonna go back to being organized at that point. So it's gonna get more frantic, and we're gonna be like, man, I've seen Raynor spam buttons. I'm gonna spam buttons too, and little do we realize,
it's fun to click stuff, Pig. All right.
It feels effective, doesn't it? It's just when we look at the replay, we see we fall behind. So definitely start batching up more overlords at this period as well, as part of that whole organization cycle. Hey, we just injected 3 hatcheries. We're going to build 4 or 5 overlords at once at this period, right? Always better to have a few more than a few less, because your production should really be ramping up. So if we're at 70 out of 95 supply, you know, something like that, sounds like a bit of an overburdening gap. I'm fine with it. 85 supply out of 120, I'm totally down with it. Sounds inefficient, but it really is not as bad as halting the production. So definitely we'll kind of expand that gap a little bit. We'll get those drones going a little bit better. Yeah. And then if we do that really well, what's really cool is we can do the like, oh, I accidentally held an all in, right? Which is, if we have really good macro, we can make up for our shitty scouting. I don't want that to be the case, that we have to do that, but it is a nice luxury.
No, it's how I play ZvT, Pig. I'm very familiar. I'm very familiar with it.
If we hit, I went 70 workers. Oh, he's 2 base all inning. Whoops. Oh, I still held with my just solid wall of Queenling Bane. Good macro. Fuck
yeah. I've lost to third base and still had 66 drones, and it's no problemo.
Rebuild 2 hatcheries. No worries, man. You don't care. Awesome. So I think that would be great, because in this scenario, right, what do we want? Obviously, more overlords should have been built here. We should have that roach warren down. Get the gases should start exploding now, which you do start doing, which is pretty cool. We could probably have taken all the gases at once, and I would have, if I did that here, I would have my natural re-rallied to its own minerals, just so the drones there are naturally popping out where they're needed is a nice technique for when we take gases. But your queens are not spread between your bases, right? They're not injecting properly, and you don't really have an organized queen defense key. So it should always be just one queen on each one. Don't bother with 2 queens in your main. If you're like, oh, but man, they always oracle dive my main. I just mashed my keyboard accidentally and I swapped to a Bernie Sanders scene. Oh my God, what the hell? How did that happen? That was comical. I don't know what that hotkey is. But yeah, basically just build a second spore in the main if you want to, if they've got 3 oracles and you only want to leave 1 queen there, because then we can just have all the other queens are at the front and they're kind of like roaming to the natural and the third. And with the overlord vision, you should be able to just, oh, oracles are heading towards the main. You spot them screens away and your queens just aim move up towards your main and bam, you kill 2 oracles, right? But we really want to keep it simple. We don't want to have like some queens here, some queens there, all off control group. Gets way too confusing.
Yeah, I feel like I've been seeing a lot of triple oracle and like 1 queen and a spore, they just kind of stand there and they try their best. But I see what you're saying about just having it more united. I don't know why I had 2 queens in the main for this game, but I did.
So we're going to go second spore in the main if we're afraid of that. We're just going to be more consistent. Anytime a queen moves away from a hatchery, we're like, hey, you're not on injecting duty. It's bam, shift 3, click hatchery, build queen, right? That if we just have that cycle, muscle memory, it's going to be pretty nice. The other thing is, like, obviously 5 minutes. So a nice little thing to think about just knowledge-wise, benchmark-wise. Yeah. If you are playing a big macro game, PROTOSS is playing a big macro game, if you get your 4th started at like 5 minutes, 5:20, 5:30, that's all awesome, right? If you're starting at 6 minutes, 7 minutes, it starts to get more like icky in terms of like, there's nothing scary you can do economy-wise that the PROTOSS has to be afraid of. There was a game yesterday where Dark was in this position where I was like, dude, his 4th is going down at 6:30. I was like, oh, it's so late, man. It's so late. Like, you got to get that a bit earlier than that. You know, it's just really awkward. Unless you're in a fighting game where they're committing to a big push and you're killing it and it doesn't really matter. So in this game, because we got the money, I'm like, dude, a 4th base and a 5th base going down, or a 4th base and a macro hatch. Oh, it would have been so tasty because we could see that money would have expanded. And we could also, with those clean inject cycles, like you're, bam, 5 overlords at a time. You're still building 2 overlords, like it's 3 minutes and we're on 2 bases and 25 drones, right? So we can see how things would just ramp up and explode into the mid game through organized cycles. We've got to set roach warren timing, and our queens are going to be a little bit more organized as well.
Yeah, I think I'm such a dedicated 3 base guy. The muscle memory to put down a 4th and a macro hatch is just it's not there. But 5 minutes, like, it feels early, but I understand what you're saying. Like it definitely makes sense.
If you have money, you always build it as well. This is not even where the matchup doesn't, because it's a macro hatch. 4th base, get out of that mindset, which so many Zergs are in, and I fall into it sometimes of like, oh, but I don't know if I can afford to drone that. It's like, dude, that's an extra barracks. Like, think of it, if you're a TERRAN player, that's going to help you kill your opponent. Like, that's what the 4th base is. It's only when you build the drones on it that you're really like being greedy, right? In quotation marks, you know, extending that. So that's why I really love like taking these bases. But then you do realize like it gives you flexibility. It makes the opponent think you're playing a big macro game. Maybe you're doing a 66 drone, roach speed, bane speed, just giant attack. But they've seen a 4th and a 5th base, and they're like trying to build all the tech and things because they think, oh, this is going late game, man. So, you know, it also makes you build more Zerglings. It's just such a cool thing. So I like that as like a set habit is like 4th base, 5th base, macro hatch, because you are essentially playing a Lingbane style with fast melee Ravager Lingbane, right? We're going to have some Ravagers, some Roaches, sometimes more than others, but essentially we just need crazy production in those styles. So if we can get 4th base, 5th macro hatch, let's try and check in your replays. Just look at it. And if you say, hey, I'm floating money, why didn't I do it? My rule is after a full macro cycle, if we're floating over like 800 minerals, I throw down 2 to 3 hatcheries. Like, that's just like a rule. I'll be like, oh man, I just did a full macro cycle. I got plenty of overlords on the way. Like, I can't spend my money right now. I got 1,000 minerals in the bank. I just like go to my main. I box 3 drones or a bunch of drones, and I go build hatchery on my 4th, build hatchery on my 5th, build a macro hatch, click, click, click.
Yeah.
add them to my hotkey when I get a chance. And that there is just such a great way to, especially in messy games, if you build that habit, it really allows you to explode back into the game. So that'll be cool. You can also benchmark in your replays. It just gives you something to like rewind and check. You're like, oh shit, I was floating money in the mid game. Really bad. And you can double check that stuff.
Yeah.
Beyond that though, like look at this. We're just floating money. We're kind of going in infestation. We're kind of making roach speed. Airy, fairy. We need to give you a direction. We need to give you a kill timing that you are going to focus on every single game. It is going to make your ZvP so much better. And I just mentioned it before. What's our new goal, man? 66 drones. New goal? 66 drone, roach speed, bane speed, +1 melee. YOLO, Ravager, Ling, Bane, all in. Is it really an all in? No, it's 66 drones. You can go up behind it. But if you commit hard to that and we benchmark that timing, let's aim for, I don't know, 8 minutes at the latest, I would say. But let's say 7:30. If we can hit 7:30 benchmark goal, the more important thing is obviously just build upon your own time, try to hit harder and faster. That'll be great. Maybe you add a Bane run by. You always hit the third base, but you also try to roll like 15 Banes into their natural, you know, blow up the Adept in the wall and just get in the mineral line at the same time. That is going to be huge because if you spent your money, dude, you just A-move this guy right now. He's got no splash damage, nothing but Stalker Zealots. Ravagerling Bane just rolls through this. A-move win. That's going to give you a really simple strategy to just repeat over and over again. You're also going to throw some games into disruptors and stuff, and that's going to be really good as well because it'll just teach us to like, okay, scout ahead with Overseers and Zerglings, and how can I attack a bit differently in that scenario to like split my army. Half kills the fourth, his army moves up to respond, your other half moves in on that right side, and even if half your army gets wiped, you're going to kill his third and fourth or like a shitload of probes, right?
Yeah. No, I love 66 drones. It's my bread and butter in ZVT. I don't know if you have any like pointers on like the actual like composition like balance, because I feel like it's always, I don't know, it's always different.
So generally speaking, it's going to depend a little bit. If we had to give a generic composition, this is something that's really important, right? Because you want to have a set thing you can do. So generically, we want 10 roaches that steadily turn into Ravagers. Everything else, Ling Bane, right? Now, obviously, if there's a shit ton of Zealots and stuff, we want a lot of Banes. But Zerglings are your main damage dealer in this army. Keep that in mind, okay? So, Lings are actually God. If you have no Lings, your army is shit, usually, right? Don't get me wrong, Banelings can kill clumped up units, they'll crush Zealots, they can roll into Worker Lines. But if you have someone, say, who's playing Mass Stalker, you actually want Zerglings to kill that. The Banelings are going to force them to spread, the Biles are going to force them to spread and do range damage. But you don't actually win that fight with pure Baneling, because all they need to do is spread their units out, and you just don't have any damage if you've only got 8 or 10 Ravagers shooting from the back line and 6 Zerglings that die.
I probably lean on the whoops too many roaches probably more often. But yeah, no, Lings, I do recognize the joy of having a million Zerglings.
Well, if they go heavy Zealot Archon, getting a big ball of Roach Ravager is really good, right?
Yeah.
So a heavy Roach Ravager ball can micro them down really well. Immortals are obviously good versus the Roaches, whereas Lings are great versus the Immortals. But if they attack in a blob and like your Banelings clear the Zealots, then you can just gun stuff down. You can always start a step backwards versus Zealot Archon, right? Roach Ravager is like kind of like Bio if it's on creep versus Zealot Archon. You just like shoot, pull back, shoot, pull back, shoot, pull back. The Immortals and the Archons are just waddling in from the back and they never get any hits off, and you kill every Zealot, like defensively before they get in. When you're attacking into them, it can get a bit more complicated than that, right? Because there's obviously, you know, more going on and you're not able to just run back the whole time. But definitely you can be a little bit more roach heavy, especially if you're on the defensive. You might end up with up to like 30 roaches, right? So generally the Roach Ravager is amazing defensively, but it's just hard to attack with. So if you're pinned back defensively, more roaches, more Ravagers, because that's going to be what's efficient to survive. But as soon as you're going aggressive and switching into that gear, try to go as much Ling Bane as possible. And from there, just look at each game individually. If you feel you messed it up or it was weird, let's like look at the replay and just write those questions down here in the document and elsewhere, and we'll go over those little theory questions, which we should be able to answer really quickly in hindsight. Because I'm sure there's some edge cases where like the rules break because it's StarCraft. We
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
memorize rules, and then,
Thanks
you
for the
know,
Bezos
there's always an
box.
exception where the rule doesn't work, and you're like, God damn it, this game. Forcing mental flexibility, man.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, we could have killed this guy by now. Definitely. We're doing Baneling run-bys, which is cool. Definitely could be doing them while attacking the front. You can see, like, we just aren't spending our money at all. So that's really
Yeah.
the big thing. Are we injecting in cycles, though, here this deep in the game? I think the answer is probably no. Let's check. Yeah. You injected your main, your third, but your natural has not been getting injected for a long time.
Yep.
So if you get past the early game and you make some mistakes, one of the best comeback mechanics is always that queuing of the injects. You know, just take a minute and just queue 6 injects in your main, 5 in your natural, some in your third. And I think you did do that here at this game.
Yeah, it's something I'm definitely trying to work on because it's something that like I you know, I just look at fights and then, you know, you got full energy in the main or whatever. So
Do you try to make a habit of injecting macro hatches and fourth bases and stuff, or no?
Yeah, so like the Creep Queen group will usually hang out by the fourth eventually. But again, it's also in the phase of the game where it's like there are many things happening.
Yeah. It's like whenever there's a gap, though, right? We should definitely just be like, oh, hey, fourth base finished, fifth base finished, cue those injects. The reason you've not been able to work on this is your fourth base timing's really late. Your fifth base timing macro hatch is really late. So it's naturally kicking in at a point where the game is more hectic and there's more distractions. So the better you get at building your bases earlier, the better you'll get at queuing a shitload of injects on those bases. So that's going to sync up and you're going to have lava fountains, basically. The earlier you start that, this matchup's going to get so much easier just by us being able to expend this 2,000 mineral bank. Like, this is game over at any point in the 6 to 9 minute window if you spend that mineral bank, and that's very encouraging. You don't need to be too fancy with your army right now. Macro is going to be the base. The fancy stuff layers on top of it. So if we think about your structure of improving right now, ZvP, don't think about, I need to hit 3 mineral lines at once with Banelings. Because I guarantee you, we can probably blob a lot of our games, especially ones like this where they're only building gateway units. You know, you just grab your blob and smush it into their blob. Sue style, right? Sue's one of the greatest players of all time. The man's engagements look like a man who's just headbutting another guy every single time.
He's my spirit animal. I wrote that in the thing. I said Sue is my spirit animal as a Zerg player. So no, I'm all for that kind of full commitment. I'm super down.
It's like it's you always look at it and you're like, this is a terrible angle. And you're like, oh, but he knew that was the right time to fight. He'd spent his money, he had a great start, injected perfectly, built his army to that point, and he knew his army was strong at that point, and that was the timing he'd built towards. And that strategy was probably in his mind 3 or 4 minutes ahead of time, and he knows to commit to it. So he's never overthinking it.
I was watching him play too, and it was like 9 minutes into the game, and he had like 47 larvae just sitting around. It's like, wow, that's he's on top of it.
He does not get distracted. Sue makes StarCraft look quite simple. I really admire players that make it look simple, you know? It's coffee in the Chinese scene always gets me a bit wet because I'm like, oh, you really? You don't ever harass your opponent and you're just going to kill them every game with this giant all-in time? Okay, this is like really hard for them to stop even when they know it's coming. All right. I'm like, cool. I always thought I needed to harass PROTOSS players at TVP, and for Sue, it's like, hey, man, yeah, you can still just do random Roachling pressures and then just overwhelm with Lingbane Muter in the mid game and just roll people. Doesn't make anything
beautiful.
Look too fancy, dude. So I think for us, we're at that point. That's got to be the base layer. We can add the fancy shit on top, and it'll start really simple. But if we start with this kind of order, let me kind of write this out in the document a little bit. So what is our order? I'm going to write this up the top, okay? So in terms of order of improvement, macro cycle is number 1. Getting those macro cycles synced up, that is the most important thing, because that's a baseline thing from like 4 minutes, 4:30 in the game that we want to build upon, and then we want to keep that habit from there. Beyond that, it's going to be earlier expansions, right? Earlier expansions and macro hatcheries every game, plus building the habit of then injecting those hatcheries, because they're going to be up way earlier than you're used to. You're going to be like, oh shit, what? It's just past 6 minutes and I can already stack 12 injects across my 4th and 5th base or 4th base and macro hatch. So we're just building these macro habits early on. Beyond that, it's what do we do to convert and get more repetitions of those two things? 66 drone Ravager Bane timing every game. And think of it as an all-in when you start. Even if it's not really an all-in, ah, man, I got wrecked. Just GG. That's fine. Because then you get another rep quicker, right?
Yeah,
If you
yeah,
can
yeah.
play customs versus a practice partner, stream viewer, whatever, that's going to be super lit for your practice because then you can just speed this whole process up, make your practice, make the ladder into a gym rather than, you know, oh, it's a competition. I got to fucking win every game, you know? You'll get so
Yeah,
better
yeah,
so
yeah.
much faster.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. That's already pretty in my wheelhouse. I'm familiar with the we gave it the old college try and it didn't work, so see you later.
Exactly. Oh, I'm just going to message admin real quick. Check me in. I forgot. Check in again. I'm dumb. Let's see if iScar can log me into ESL because I forgot to do it again like an idiot, like I do every week. We'll see if he's awake. See if he sees my message. Hopefully he does. He does. You are a god. Thank you so much. Okay, he did. Good job. iScar's the best. Awesome, dude. So that's going to be really good, right? And then the last layer on top of that is like, well, let's attack better with that attack, right?
Yeah.
So improving the attack is going to be like Bane run by same time. Maybe you could just have like 5 Banes to blow up the Adept in the wall and like 20 Zerglings, right? So you show your army at their third, you go Oogie Boogie, and then the other units just crash into the natural, and then you run into the main in the natural mineral line, and then you just put all you do is split the lings, half in the main, half in the natural. You go, fuck you, PROTOSS, you got a big problem to deal with, and then you put all your focus on the army on the front, right? So you kind of move the army in to make them look at it, pull it back, focus on the run by for 5 seconds, 10 seconds, split that up, go back and full focus on your main army for the next 30 seconds to a minute. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's one of my favorite things to do as a player. It's just like, hey, look over here. Oh, it's low. Better look at it.
I'm definitely not just going to run away the moment you fire Storm or Disruptors or anything. Nope. That's awesome. Yeah, 2-prong distractions, non-stop Bane run-bys, Zergling minivans, right? The slow Overlord drop in the main. Like you just tell 8 Zerglings to drop in the corner of their main, click that in their main mineral line, and then you attack on the front, and they're just like not looking at the right place, and you just get a sick engagement because of it. There's so many like little things you can do to mess with the PROTOSS. Those are all great. And then the final one beyond that, which I don't want you to do for weeks. I think you should move up the ladder massively before you need to do this.
Sure.
And that is transitioning behind it, right? And we could do things like drop a spire as you move out or something like that, right? Drop a spire as you move out, plus, you know, take gases on 4th. Because what's your opponent doing? They're making Archon, Storm, Immortals, all these things like to try and survive the next wave or handle the wave that's coming in. And then you build 12 mutors, and then you go back to Ravager Bane behind it, right? For the finishing blow, while your mutors are just going to distract them and do damage and stuff like that, right? But at least then we've got a plan, right? Where we take gases on the 4th, drone to 80 workers, right? So we build like, you know, enough workers for the gas on the 4th and a handful on the minerals, drone to 80 workers, plus transfer from main, 12 mutors to distract, and then keep going all in on Ravager Bane, right? As long as we have these simple game decisions that are made beforehand, where we're not letting ourselves try to go Hive and Broodlord and then fester and drag the game out, it's just going to give us more immediate feedback on like, okay, maybe I could have won if I went Broodlord, but you know what? There's things to improve right here now, and we can only focus on so much at once as a player. So it's going to be good for us to simplify it that way and kind of just keep it a bit more of a contained problem, right? So obviously we're kind of running short on time. Are there questions or areas or things we can discuss quickly here before we finish that I haven't covered? Like we've covered some things to improve, but I'm sure there's other things that hopefully we can answer today.
Is the attack the same if there's a fast fleet beacon?
Oh, that's kind of funny. Yeah. So if there's a fast like fleet beacon, if they're playing like kind of a Sky Tossy style, I imagine we'd play a completely different style. What would you do normally versus a Sky Toss type thing?
I just roll Banes until I die. It's not great at closing the game out, but I can definitely make them work for it. But I mean, I guess it's Lingbane Corruptor, right?
So verse Sky Toss / you know, early carriers, I do think getting a great economy up is huge. Like if you can drone a 4th and then maybe even a 5th mineral line, you can kind of just win by smashing Lingbane into them. Yeah. But definitely a Spire and Corruptors. to, you know, shift click down air units. The trick is to not just sit there making corruptors. Corruptors are a timing unit. They're a unit you build a pack of corruptors and you go kill shit with them right then and there. So if those carriers are pushing across the map, okay, I got to build 10 corruptors, 8 corruptors, whatever. Maybe only 7 corruptors, right? You don't need that many to kill 2 carriers. They kind of kick the shit out of carriers. So maybe you go 7 corruptors to defend the carriers, or maybe you go, no, I'm going to go like 13. Because I'm going to make them recall, and then I'm going to go across the map and hunt them down. I'm going to fly over stalkers, cannons, I don't care. Like, battery, I don't give a shit. If I've got 13 corruptors, I'm just going to go kill them, piss on a nexus, and behind that, I'll be droning up. The important thing, though, is like, you know, you only build corruptors with a purpose, right?
Sure.
It's always with a purpose. It's never, oh, I'm just sitting here maxing on corruptors, because that's checkmating yourself. It's like maxing on ultra corruptor is so good if your opponent attacks into you, or you get a good fight, or you're going to break them straight away. The longer you sit on it, the more your opponent's like, oh, okay, Storm, yep, Void Rays, yep, Immortals, yep. You know, like they're just going to counter your composition.
Yeah.
And the other thing is just be greedy. So be greedy. So get 6 base economy, you know, get 6 bases up, you know, 5 fully mining, and be wasteful with your Ling Bane run bys. Just keep smashing Ling Bane into them. I try to avoid, if I'm doing that style, I try to like just defend the carriers with queens. I'll be like, I'm going to build 10 queens with like a couple spores for these first 2 carriers. I'm not even going to build a spire. I'm going to be that greedy. I'm just going to be like trying to drone a 4th, drone a 5th, and then just smash Ling Bane. And people will be like, oh, but he's walled off. I'm like, no. Like I click on the Cybercore, kill their +2 and the unit in the wall, and then split the Ling Bane in the main and the natural. And then as they pull to respond to that, I run my rally or the rest of my units into their 3rd or 4th. And once you crack in the walls, like you usually can overwhelm them. And if they're very carrier focused, ultras are really good for base trading because the carriers take forever to kill them.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's just a quick question, really. I mean, it happened. You're talking about corruptors, and I'm like, oh yeah, that happened the other day where I was just making them because I was like, I need to make them, and they just kind of sit around. So I definitely just lost a game exactly like you were saying.
It's happened to everybody, man. You can't, when you sit there, you get reactive versus PROTOSS. There's always a recipe for disaster, right? Like I really miss Heart of the Swarm sometimes just because with the way the unit interactions work, like I got to play a full, real like fundamental theoretical ZvP style in that matchup where it was like, hey man, I'm going Roach Hydra, Viper, and they're like, oh, so then they have to go like Storm, but then they've like gone from their Immortal Colossus comp into Storm or whatever, right? And then I'm like Broodlords, and they're like, oh, I need to go Tempest, but then I'm like, hey, guess what? Like, you know, Corruptor's kind of hard counter Tempests, and I'm already prepared to like, you know, get the Corruptors out. Or I would just swap off the Broodlords, actually. That's what I would do. I'd be like, oh, you're building Tempest, that unit's like not really good versus anything except the Broodlord. So you're wasting money on that. And I'm hitting a timing before you get the Tempest out. So I'm like, I'm getting efficiency out of the unit, and then I'm swapping into Ultra Hydra Viper. And my opponents already lost their Immortals, hopefully, in the previous fight. And they're like on like Tempests and some High Templar. And like Ultras are just cleaving through and killing the High Templar. And then the Hydra Viper's coming in from behind. And, you know, there was like just this tech switching nature of the matchup where it was always like, all my units suck dick, but you're never going to have the counter to them until after I've already traded them off. And then I'm already moving every time into the counter to your counter. And that's kind of the idea here with the idea of potentially doing like a muta switch behind the Ravager Ling Bane, right? Is generally when you hit a timing attack against PROTOSS with ground, muta switch is always so good because everything that's stopping your ground, disruptors, Storm, Immortals, all that shit is just so trash up against a muta style.
Yeah.
So take advantage of that slow PROTOSS production and we should be good. Awesome, dude. I really like that we've got a fundamental focus for you starting out because you have a plan, you're heading. It's a light in the murky, foggy waters, right? You're going across that ferry through the swamp. That light is 66 drone, Ravager Ling Bane makes smash, and you do not care if it's a victory or defeat screen, my man. I want to see just benchmark it, pause as your attack's going in that replay, and I want you to just write down a list of like, what time is this that I'm like just hitting? How many Roaches, Ravagers do I have here? How much Ling Bane do I have? What upgrades do I have? And just write that down. And just
do you have a rough like supply number for that, or just
I have no clue.
No idea.
Absolutely no clue. I'm gonna like 140 supply. I'm saying I have no idea. 140 maybe. But it's like Ravager speed and Bane, Roach speed and Bane speed are the two most important upgrades.
Last one question. +1 ranged?
I'd go melee. Okay. Because you're just playing Evo Chamber, just right? Single Evo.
Yeah.
You could go, yeah, so I'd go +2 melee, then I'd go +1 range after that.
Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah. That's kind of what I had in my head, but just checking.
There are games where it gets a bit different, where you kind of end up like on the defense defending all ins the whole time. And those are the games where you're like, okay, like I'm kind of stuck on heavy roach. Like, okay, I'm going to play +1 range, right? Especially if you're playing Roach Swarm Host, of course, which is coming back into fashion a little bit. But it's definitely only really good on the smaller maps usually. Kind of weaker on the smaller maps as well. That's a whole thing. Anyways,
Yeah.
You've got a bloody shitload of information to work on there, mate. But I like that it's fundamentals first to start. I think you're going to just have so many situations that don't make sense. There's also the scouting notes as well. So I haven't written that in your order of improvement as super high priority because I think it's just something, you know, a few of the other notes are more minor. I don't really feel like I'll be checking in on them as much. But every time you play a game and you go, this doesn't work, what the hell, pig? Every time you go, this is confusing, this is what's going on, I want you to basically, just write it down, what the hell, label the replay. And every time you go, what the fuck, game unfair, those are the best points for us to talk about and think about during our coaching sessions. So if you can record as many of those, just a note like, it bullshit, how he do this. And then we can look at it calmly later. Like, those are the things that we're so motivated to learn from, man.
Yeah. No, it's good. It definitely feels like the plan is clear, and honestly the margins of improvement look pretty wide. So like I'm pumped.
Heck yeah, dude. I'm really excited to see how it goes. Always good when someone's been lost in a matchup a little bit to get that direction again. So once again, hit me up after a day or two of practice. Maybe we want to hit up another session in a week or so. Just shoot me a message after a little bit day of practice and figuring out, you know, if we want to set up one in a week, the week after, and we'll set that one up and see how it goes.
Alrighty.
All right, mate. Good luck. Have fun. I'll catch you later.
Thanks, bud. Good luck with your subathon. I hope your sanity stays in check and you and Dot are hanging in there.
Oh, we're being a bit more reasonable with it, a bit more sustainable. Last night, didn't even go to sleep. I literally just was going to sleep, and people could just see me watching the UFC VOD for like an hour and a half. So
man,
I'm taking a bit more
live your
time
life,
to preserve my sanity.
No, that's good. That's good. All right, man.
Thanks for hanging, man.
Have a good
night.